Hello and namaste. This is World Business Report from the BBC World Service. I'm Devina Gupta. On the show today, we take a look at the economic data from China. So let's move towards East. China has been in the headlines for business news all this week, where a series of disappointing data releases has shown that its economy is struggling. Consumers are staying away from spending on big ticket items like cars and homes, and that's why the government is trying to revive spending by lowering borrowing costs. But economists feel it's time for bolder decisions and a stimulus package. Among them is Andy Xie, who's previously worked for Morgan Stanley and the World Bank.
All these stimulus measures we're hearing are really for boosting confidence in the financial market. They are not intended really to make the real economy go up a lot. China has to go through a couple of years of restructuring at least before we can have a higher growth rate like before.
You're joining us from Shanghai. Tell us, what is it like to live there? Are people going back to shops and malls? Are people spending?
Yeah, but spending is different from before. People appreciate life more than before. So restaurants are packed. So people are spending money that way. They're going to Southeast Asia to have a good time and so forth. But they're not buying cars or Louis Vuitton bags like before. I think we have a change in consumer behavior. So people are spending money on quality of life issues.
There's been a host of American entrepreneurs who've made their way to China in the past few months. We've had Apple CEO Tim Cook, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, and now you have Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates in China as we speak. Now, what kind of signal is it sending about business confidence in China?
Well, the Chinese market is obviously very important. So I think they're coming to check out the market and they want to understand, will the government be able to turn around the economy? I think the messages they probably get is that China is probably not eager to massively stimulate like before. It needs to deal with its structural problem. China needs to focus on these issues first and not like throwing money around to boost the growth. So I believe this is a more sustainable story.
That's interesting because you also have the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who's coming to China this weekend to meet President Xi Jinping. Now, a lot seems to be on the agenda, but do you see this as a step towards thawing those trade tensions between the two countries?
Well, both sides want to put a flaw to this sliding relationship. And it's a difficult job. I think that now the West is kind of scared of China. And they see China as rising militarily. And they have worse suspicions of China's intentions. If you have something like that, the relationship will be very difficult. Now, on the economic side, the West has come to the conclusion that decoupling probably doesn't work. They had an idea of reshoring, bringing the industry back. That didn't work out. Then they had the idea of friendshoring, putting industry in friendly countries. That didn't work out. Now, I think the latest idea is de-risking, kind of a idea of a small garden, tall walls. So we carry on in terms of trading relationship, but in certain areas, we put a very tight restriction there. So basically, that's the understanding is that the West is not in a position to cut China off. That's why there's this attempt to stabilize the relationship between the two. But obviously, nobody's winning. Obviously, it's not a good situation for anybody. So putting a flaw to the relationship is beneficial to all. But the long-term question is here. China wants to have more power. That is obvious. I think for the West, the bottom line is that how do you view Chinese power? And do you accept the Chinese power or not? And this is the issue. If the West does not want to accept Chinese power, we're going to have lots of complications down the road.
But then even the 5% growth target that President Xi Jinping has set for China's economy right now, it's essential for him to have support of other countries. It's essential for him to end these trade tensions, and especially with the US. So to what extent do you think the meeting between Anthony Blinken and President Xi Jinping can help in that target?
Well, I do not believe the U.S. companies will invest a lot in China. It's just not likely. I think China is not expecting that. Some European companies may, because China is their largest market. But I think that politically in the United States, the sentiment is so negative about China. The politicians are basically screaming about this money flow to China all the time. So I really don't see that's coming. There's no upward trend in the bilateral relationship. The best we can hope for is a kind of a flattening out.
That was Andy Xie, a former economist with Morgan Stanley and the World Bank, joining us from Shanghai.